My friend Ryan Payton is joining me today on the show. It's been too long, my friend, and you guys have been busy over at Camouflaj. Congratulations on Iron Man VR launching on a platform that doesn't require a tether.
That's amazing, right? Yeah.
It couldn't have been an easy thing to do, though, because it was obviously built for a different VR platform altogether originally. Was it a difficult process to bring it over to the Quest 2?
Well, first of all, like, it's great to be reconnected with you. You and I go way back, and I oftentimes think about the cool work that we did together on Metal Gear.
Me too.
To answer your question, we're so proud of the work that we did with Marvel's Iron Man VR to bring it originally to PlayStation VR. Yep. And I was thinking about this morning. Is that we wanted to deliver the ultimate Iron Man experience and pair it with the strengths of VR. The headset is a nice pairing to the HUD of Tony Stark, right?
Totally.
You've got like the thrusters coming out of the motion controls. You can ground pound, you can rocket punch, you can shoot out of your palms. We knew that was going to be a good experience, regardless of the platform. But with PlayStation VR, it did have some limitations. It has that cable. It has the move controllers that weren't really necessarily designed for some of these things. Yeah. And a handful of other things we'll talk about. But as a team, we just kind of like Tony Stark, we just kind of blasted through those issues, and we made the best experience we could on that platform, I believe.
Yep.
And then when the conversation arose within Meta that, hey, what if we could partner with Sony, and how about we bring Marvel's Iron Man VR to Quest 2, which would allow us to go even further and like kind of deliver that pure experience of not having to worry about the cable, having the really, really responsive touch controls that they have, having the SSD drive, so the load times are lickety split, and having those cleaner and more recent lenses to make the game just look a lot more crisper. And we knew it was going to be a tough project because there were some obviously limitations with a less powerful hardware, but the team just jumped in and went for it. And I guess I think you might find this anecdote somewhat funny. Is that, I mean, you know me well enough. I'm a pretty optimistic guy. I'm like, yeah, we could do anything. Come on. But we surveyed the team before, like just as we were getting started, and we asked the developers within Camouflaj, do you think we could bring this game to Quest 2? Will it run properly? Will it look good? And most of the team was basically saying, I don't think so. I'm not convinced. I don't know if we could do it.
Yeah.
And so then we spent months rallying the team, showing them that it can work. And not only can it work, it can be really, really good. And by the end of it, everybody was just like excited, rallying behind the project. Extremely cathartic experience launching this game. We're so proud of how the response has been and how it plays on the platform.
Awesome. I remember playing the game on PlayStation VR. I live streamed it and reviewed it, and I had such a great time with it. I think it's a beautiful, crystallized homage to the Iron Man property, and you really do feel like you're in the armor and the boots of Iron Man. But yes, I got tangled up in the cord and the cable, and the move controls would lose their access to the machine, and it just became a little bit frustrating because you just couldn't ever escape into the experience. Now that the game is out there on the Quest, all of that is put away, and the minute that you start to turn around with the headset on, it is so freeing and such a wonderful kind of representation of what VR can be. The game's been out for a while already on this platform. What's the feedback been for you guys, and what's the reception been for the game?
Well, it's been, like I was saying, like a very like cathartic experience, because when we shipped the game originally for PlayStation VR, we woke up, it was like Christmas morning, and we're like, oh, what's going to be under the tree? What kind of reviews are we going to get? And we got some incredible reviews, like perfect scores, and people saying it's a masterpiece. Eventually, the game would go on to get nominated for Game of the Year award at the Game Award for VR. We won other VR Game of the Year awards, but it was also it was paired with some reviews that really, where people really did struggle with getting into the full experience. And some of it was really truly on us. It's not just the hardware's the limitations. It was the load times were too long.
Load times are hard. Yeah.
And that really takes you out of the experience in VR when, it's not easy to, like when you're playing a normal kind of flat screen game, you're playing, and if there's a long load, you could, you look at your phone, you can kind of look around, but when you're in VR, you're just kind of watching a load screen, and that's not the most compelling experience. So we woke up that morning, I think, with like kind of mixed emotions. We wanted it. We thought it was going to be just blowing everybody away, and it didn't. And some people were getting kind of hung up on the hardware, and for good reason. Some of their frustrations, I understand.
Yeah.
So being able to come back to the title, have like a second shot at it, bring it to the Quest 2, we had a launch gathering on the day after launch, so November 4th, and it was like an incredible therapy session where we felt like when we saw just how warm the reviews have been, which, on an aggregate site, we're about an 87 right now, which is incredible.
Yeah.
The team, like, there's just hugs and tears, and like, yes, I think people kind of finally can appreciate the creative work that we put into the game.
Totally.
Because a lot of the hardware restrictions are just, like you said, they kind of vanish. It's kind of more of a pure essence of what we created.
We're in a very interesting inflection point now with VR, aren't we? Where we've got the new Quest Pro device from Meta, and the PlayStation VR 2 is about to launch. But I also feel like there is this appetite for more, and a little bit more of a feeling of, okay, prove it, from the community and from the gamers out there. A little more hesitancy, I think, than even when the Quest 1 was launched, and the Quest 2, I think, picked up on the coattails of that. Of course, Meta's in the news for all kinds of tough reasons right now. But what do you feel as a VR developer? What's happening in this space, and what should people be encouraged by and excited by?
I'm encouraged by the fact that I think that VR as a medium, as a technology, has really graduated to a really important next step in terms of mainstream acceptance and proliferation.
Yes, and thanks to the Quest 2.
Thanks to the Quest 2. Thanks to PlayStation VR.
Yes, absolutely right. Yeah.
Thanks to Half-Life Alyx. Thanks to Valve for putting that effort into that game. It's amazing.
Yeah,
I think that the fact that you are not asking, is VR a thing? Is VR going to be a thing? It's more, how is it going to get even bigger? How is it going to be better? Like, what's next on the horizon? To me, is an indication that as a member of the VR kind of development group, we've graduated. But it's one of those things where you don't get a real pat in the back when people say, "Hey, nobody's asking if VR is going to be a thing or not anymore." Now they're asking. They kind of recognize that VR is good, and but how is it going to be even better? You don't get a word for that, but I think it's a really good indication that things are headed in the right direction, and there's a lot to celebrate.
Listen, there is so much incredible work in VR, and I'm amazed by it all the time. And I take a look at everything, and I play all kinds of stuff. But every time I dip into VR and I play it, I'm just encouraged by the imagination and the sort of Wild West attitudes of developers out there. But you have just worked on one of the biggest properties on planet Earth, thanks to the MCU, and it's a unabashed success. But there isn't a lot of that. These licensed properties that are, games based on things that people are familiar with. And I've been saying for a long time that we need the Star Wars stuff. We need the Marvel stuff. We need these characters and these properties in this space, so that people don't have to take any extra leaps. They can just go right to content that they're already familiar with and be blown away by the creativity of the development team, as your game allows, as Star Wars Squadrons did as well. What's it going to take, and what's it like working with these big license holders and these caretakers of these properties that I think anybody that's a fan of the technology of VR, that's one of the first things that they're going to think about. They want to fly X-Wings. They want to be Iron Man. They'd love to be Spider-Man. Are the license holders coming around, and what's it like to work with them, and where does it go from here for this kind of product?
Yeah, I think you're right, Vic. I think a big part of the next step for VR is that I believe it will have even more acceptance and more mainstream success. I think a big component of that is making sure that, yes, VR delivers on that fantasy, on that full immersion of being in these worlds. Many of them, the worlds that you've wanted to be in, and these known IPs, these massive IPs, right? And you mentioned a few, I think, good successes up until now that really helped. I'd like to think that Iron Man VR contributed to that conversation
100%.
When we launched our PlayStation VR. But you also have Star Wars Immortal, Vader Immortal on the Quest series, which I thought was cool. You've got Star Wars Squadron you're talking about. The Rick and Morty VR game is super fun, and you get immersed. It's short, but it's really, really good. And there's in Half-Life, having a huge sequel for VR is, I think, brought a lot of attention. However, I think there needs to be more. And I think that's probably why Sony's bringing their huge franchise, Horizon Zero Dawn, to PlayStation VR with their exclusive built for VR game, which I'm excited to play. And I just pre-ordered my PlayStation VR 2 earlier today, and I'm already thinking about, man, how can I set aside like 3 days of just in darkness where nobody interrupts me, where I play Resident Evil Village in PlayStation VR.
In VR, yeah. Right.
I'm very excited because I'm a big Resident Evil fan. So yeah,
Resident Evil 7 in VR was incredible too, and I think that and I think it dovetailed on people picking up the PlayStation VR for the first time, right? It was like, oh my god, okay, this and that's kind of the thing. It's low hanging fruit to think about these huge properties and selling people on them, but I think the history of the video game industry is so tied to these other properties that people are familiar with, the superhero titles, the Turtles, the licensed games all through the ages. Batman Arkham is an excellent example. And the Arkham VR example was cool, but also not Iron Man VR, not that next step. Are you feeling like this also proves, your work now proves out that there's going to be more opportunity for you as, someone that's running a game studio? Are you seeing people that have the keys to these incredible franchises coming to you guys now with some, you don't have to reveal if you're not ready to.
No, of course.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. We're honored that our door gets knocked on, frequently about, hey, what do you guys think about doing this? Or can we bring this to VR? It's one of the great privileges of working on a massive IP, as you mentioned, like Iron Man, right?
Yes.
Because I think the team executed really well. We showed that we could respect the source material, deliver that pure fantasy of being Iron Man in VR, and how could we extend this experience that we had to other IP, to other experiences, right? So those are conversations that are not only ongoing for our studio, but I'm hearing and seeing a lot of other really exciting developments within Meta as an organization about how we can kind of continue to take this to the next level.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we're beyond the idea of just launching a movie and there being like a VR application that celebrates the movie. We got to move past that. We have to have.
I think we're past it. I think we are. Yeah, I think you're right.
Great. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, also what's encouraging in this story particularly is the fact that PlayStation partnered with Oculus or with Meta and put this together. And I imagine Marvel made the Kumbaya moment happen. Yes. Which is great, though, because I think one of the other challenges that VR, and you can correct me if you think differently, but I think one of the other challenges is that we have this other, console war that's happening with VR and exclusives tied to platforms when it's still a burgeoning medium. It's still a medium that needs growth and it needs adoption, and there's so much good software. It should, and most of it is, but it all should be available across the board. And, I don't know if this will happen, but PlayStation is publishing on PC and Xbox is already playing with PC and with Quest now with the Game Pass adoption, which is awesome. But could we see something like Horizon, which is going to be a big title for PlayStation VR 2, be ported to Quest, or is that a several years down the road thing that might happen? It's
I'm just a lowly developer now within the larger Meta organization. So, this is just my opinion, right? Not like an official kind of like from on high kind of thought.
You're also a caretaker now of this medium. You've been, a front line VR developer now for half a decade.
For many years. Yeah, we're actually like really old school now in this relatively young and nascent technology, right? But there will be articles like PlayStation VR 2 versus Quest 2, which
of course there will,
buy, and that's natural because there is competition. But there's, I think, what the fact that Marvel's Iron Man VR, as originally as an exclusive title that Sony fully funded and supported, and then their willingness to work with Oculus Studios to bring the game to Quest 2, I think is an indication that there is a lot of still love and respect between those two companies. And I think and again, I'm just speaking my opinion, but I believe it's part of a larger initiative to just help VR become a bigger thing because it's so cool. And people want more VR content. They want to see more success. In fact, there's a lot of Quest 2 titles that were announced for PlayStation VR 2 that are coming out next year, like Demeo and like
Demeo was amazing.
Demo was a really, really, really great game, and Tales from the Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge has also been announced. And so it's really cool to see that kind of cross pollination of these titles kind of going into different platforms.
Well, I know you're excited about PlayStation VR 2. I am as well. And Quest has put out a more professional leaning product with the Pro. But what's your take now on tethered or untethered? You know, like, are you concerned about the tethered element of PlayStation VR 2, or is there still a future for tethered VR, or do we need to move as a VR industry to more standalone experiences?
I believe long-term for VR to have mass adoption, I think a wireless untethered experience is essential.
Yeah.
However, and that's why I love the Quest 2. I love just jumping into that
putting
thing
it on, yes,
and instantly just getting into the experience and not have to worry about my environment.
Yeah, like Resident Evil 4 on the Quest 2 was sublime. It was just shouldn't have worked. It was a crazy idea, and it was so freaking fun, right? Yeah.
One of the best VR games last year. Highly recommend people check it out. In fact, you could buy a Quest 2. I think this holiday, I think they have a campaign where you get it for free, basically, which is crazy, which is amazing. But that being said, I do think that there is value in having a high spec seated experience for VR, which is what PlayStation VR offered for me when I was playing Resident Evil 7, which is one of my favorite experiences of all time. But I played it with my butt on my couch with the controller still, and I was still very immersed. But I don't think that's like, it's probably, being tethered is probably not the best experience for all types of games. But for games like Resident Evil, I thought actually it worked really well. And I'll probably be doing the same thing for Village when I play it on PlayStation VR too. Yeah,
and I played Star Wars Squadrons through PlayStation VR, and even though it was on every other machine, it just worked really well on that, and that's where I finished the game. That's where I played it the most.
That's a good one. And another one I actually think is Tetris Effect. I don't know if you played that in VR, but that's when you don't need to play Tetris standing up. You sit down, you relax, but you're fully immersed in VR, and it's a beautiful experience. And it's great on Quest 2. It's great on PlayStation VR.
I just caught the Thrillseeker video that's blowing up all over the place, and he had some pleads for Mark Zuckerberg and the Meta universe and all that. But one of the things that I thought was pretty interesting about that was this idea of PC VR being kind of in the rear view, it looks like, from Meta. And then that got me thinking, couldn't there be technology, let's say Iron Man VR could run off of PC, like a great PC, a hyper powerful PC. I know that you can wirelessly connect the Meta Quest 2 and there's all kinds, but it's not as easy and seamless as it is to just put the Quest 2 on. And I wonder if there exists this opportunity to create that technology so that anybody with a PC or a Mac, especially with the new chipsets that the Macs have right now, to be able to connect a thing like the Quest 2 instantly like that and then have an improved wireless experience. And if so, do you like that idea? And could there be a fit maybe for Iron Man?
I love you have one of your talents, I think, because you can put yourself in the shoes of developers, right? And this is the kind of stuff we think about all the time when we think about future technology, when we think about how can we continue to push VR forward, because we're doing, I mean, if you play Iron Man VR on Quest 2, I think anybody who plays it would agree, like, the game looks pretty darn stunning especially considering it's on a mobile chipset. Like, pretty, like, all credit goes out to the team and the hardware makers. Like, I think they did a great job with Quest 2. But you think, like, how can we go further than this, right? One of the ways you could do it is today you can have a good PC next to you. You can hit that Quest Link button and wirelessly stream Alex, Skyrim VR, whatever's on PC VR. There's a lot of great PC VR content, and stream it to the Quest 2. That is my preferred way to play PC games these days, PC VR games these days. However, it's not as seamless as I think that you're suggesting. So who knows what the future is? One of my favorite, one of the things I look forward to every year is when John Carmack speaks at the Connect conference and just goes off for an hour, like, completely unfiltered. And he does talk about this, like, how can streaming, how can offline rendering help make these experiences more robust? Is that something that we can explore? But I think those are really mainly just conversations, because we're just so focused on the fact that, yes, Iron Man VR looks great on Quest 2. Our next title looks great as well, and there's still a lot of performance to squeeze out of these chipsets.
Oh yeah, no question about it. And I think what the challenge is that VR has had an interesting route. It hasn't just been like a Moore's law kind of thing. There's been this comfort route, and there has been this technology route, and I've been lucky enough to kind of dabble with all of it, and play with all of the stuff. And I do just want these amazing experiences. I do just want them. And then I also want them to be state of the art. And I also want them to be not gatekeeped, or whatever the word is, like open it up so that people, whoever picks up a headset, no matter who makes it, can have access to all of this incredible content. We're getting there, though. I do feel like we're getting there. And not just in VR. I feel like we're getting there with the games industry, too. I'm reviewing Spider-Man Miles Morales on the Steam Deck this week.
That's right.
It's such a weird business now. It's very different than it ever was.
You have such a passion for the industry. You've been doing it for more years than I have, and I have. But as you know, I'm super passionate as well, right? And I think one of the fun things about our jobs is that the games industry is still very volatile and there's lots of interesting things that you can't predict to happen.
It's defining itself.
Like the Steam Deck, who would have ever expected that to be a thing? And now portable PC gaming that looks and feels great is a thing. That's really surprising, right? And then for VR as well, you can't predict you couldn't have predicted where we are today 5, 6, 7 years ago, because we didn't know that motion controls were going to be as important as they were. We didn't know that resolution is important, but that the lenses are arguably more important, or how much periphery you have is really, really important. We didn't think that wireless at the beginning was going to be so pivotal to the experience that we would sacrifice performance for ease of use and mobility, right? Yeah. So all these learnings, and for those of your viewers, your listeners that have picked up lots of different VR headsets, I don't know. I find it really fun to see the technology just move so rapidly, right? But you got to be okay with a little bit of volatility and knowing that, hey, it's not going to be as stagnant as maybe how console gaming has become, where it's each step is fairly predictable at this point, right?
Yeah, there is this sort of generational shift every single time, and there is stuff that you can kind of sort of plot for. But I think the Quest 2 was the great disruptor. It came in and it showed that you didn't need, to be the most powerful beast out there to provide the most incredible escapism, and it's really a wonderful device. It's really brought a lot of people to the medium in some really cool ways. Let's talk a little about Camouflaj's path through this, which I think also is equally circuitous, and the path was very different, right? Because you guys started as an indie studio making mobile games, I think, to begin with. That was sort of the first sort of look, and then you brought Republic across a bunch of different platforms. How did you end up in VR, and now is VR the only path forward for Camouflaj, or are you thinking about other things for the studio?
Well, we had our fair share of ups and downs as an independent studio over those 11 years, and you were a big part of those early years, especially when we did Kickstarter for Republic, and I had this vision of having a high quality story-driven content for smartphones, which was really a very, very important concept at that point. And I really bet the farm. I mean, I literally bet all of my savings, my liquidated 401k from Microsoft, all of my stock, my folks, as you know them, they supported us. And really, we started from nothing, and we grew the company to at its peak about 85 people, and that was. But we did that despite never having a huge hit. And what that meant was, because because Republic didn't set the world on fire, we had to continue to flow with where the industry was taking us and take opportunities as they came. We went from mobile to Republic becoming a big PS4 title with Gung Ho, and then we went to cloud streaming battle royale of a game that never came out, never announced, to me panicking and then the team, while I'm trying to figure out our next project, the team is off experimenting in VR because they're enamored by the technology. And I was able to parlay that into, we can do a huge VR game with Marvel, with Iron Man, eventually with Sony. And I paired that together. thinking that after this project, what's next? Like, are we going to do a big PlayStation 5 game? Are we going to do PC? Or what are we going to do next, right? But a really pivotal thing happened to me and the company on the eve of launch of Iron Man VR for PlayStation VR. And that is a few local leaders of big game companies in Seattle came to visit Camouflaj right on the eve of the pandemic starting. And they just wanted to come by and say hi, check out Iron Man, and ask me what was next. And I told them, hey, we've got these different opportunities. Oculus Studios is also interested in working with us on a VR game after we finish Iron Man. And I said, I didn't know what to do yet. I'm kind of thinking about it every day. Like, what's the best path for the company? And they just kind of laughed and dismissed all of my concerns and said, why would you pivot your company again to work in this red ocean of PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X games, high-spec PC, where you guys haven't lived in that space? It's super competitive, and you guys are awesome at VR. Why don't you guys double down on VR?
You just learned everything about VR, right? You just did the crash course. Yeah.
Right? Yes. Like, you are way ahead of the curve than anybody else. Like, why are we even talking about this? It was basically like this funny and dismissive conversation that we had.
That's great.
And I walked out of that meeting. Okay, yep. Calling up Oculus Studios, like, let's do it. Like, we're doubling down on VR. We're going all in VR. We love it. We're really great at it, and let's make it even better.
That's awesome. That's awesome. When can you tell us what's next?
We actually don't have a plan for exactly when we're going to announce the next game, but it's been in development since we wrapped up work on Marvel's Iron Man VR for PlayStation VR. And we continue to work on that title, even though a lot of work was done to bring Iron Man to Quest 2. But we were not able to do that if it wasn't for another development studio that I'm not sure if you're familiar with. They're called Endeavor One. Some ex-Microsoft and Valve friends got together, and they've been. I did
some behind the scenes with those guys. Yes, I do know those. Yeah,
so they're amazing at it. Great team. So we were lucky enough that they were available, and we called them up and said, "Hey, can you help us bring Iron Man VR to Quest 2 this holiday?" And thankfully, they were super into the idea. So we leaned on a lot of that team. Who's also another Seattle-based organization, to allow us to kind of keep our main team focused on our next project while we supported Endeavor One to bring this game to life on Quest 2.
That's fantastic. Okay, so Camouflaj started as a Seattle company, but you are in Japan now. You're back in Japan. You had a long run in Japan. Now you're back in Japan. Is Camouflaj in Japan too, or what? Do you have two studios? What's happening now with your company?
Yeah, we were so focused on Seattle. That's where we're growing our studio. A lot of great talent there for game development, right? And I love being in the office. I love the energy of being in the office. And people would ask, like, "Hey, can I move to another part of the world and I'll work remote?" And I was like, "Heck no! This is how we make games. We do it all under the same roof. That's what we're doing." And then the pandemic hit, and then we, just like a lot of other companies, we saw that yes, it's hard to be disconnected. It's hard not to be with people, but there's also some advantages too, to allowing people to have that flexibility. And so what really happened during the pandemic is that so many team members from Camouflaj kind of scattered to the four corners of the earth, myself included, where I was on vacation in Japan working remote during the pandemic. And I realized that not only is this working, this might actually work better, because when the team in Seattle and then the team in New York finishes the build for the day, it gets uploaded to our source control. I download it in my morning here in Japan. I review the content, then notes, and then goes to our friends in Europe who start fixing things or start addressing things or start building things. And by the time New York and Seattle wakes up, they have notes and some bug fixes already done. And all they had to do was go to sleep, right? And so there's a lot of efficiencies for the way that Camouflaj has been structured now. So yeah, we're all over the place. And we're also, we're excited that I think in October it was announced that we became part of Meta. So Camouflaj as a studio still exists. We're just now part of, as a first party studio, as part of Oculus Studios, and able to continue to work the way that we've wanted to work.
Congratulations. That's awesome. So where is HQ then, the sort of base of Camouflaj? Is it in Seattle still, or is it in Bay Area?
So we have an office here in Japan, and it's a small office, and but we get a lot of great work done. Me and my colleague here, Matt Walker, and a good crew, we get a lot of good work done here. But I think if you're going to ask the team, the heart and soul, like the base, is still in Seattle. That's where the majority of our staff is. I return there quite often to kind of just check in with the team. And that's where we have our big gatherings and stuff like that. So our home base is still in Seattle.
But your home now is in Japan.
That's right.
Again. How is it for you returning to the country that you fell in love with and had so much great times, and tough times working on all the Metal Gear stuff that you did out there and the adventures you had before? What's Japan like now to go back to live there again?
I hope you and your listeners and viewers find this interesting, but to me, I think it's fascinating to have worked here in Japan under two extremely different circumstances. Yeah, I really got my start in the games industry, as you know, working as a producer on Metal Gear Solid 4 and other titles within Konami, and I fully embraced that. How I just fully integrated over there, and I worked like a hardworking salary man, they would call it, over here, right? Where pretty rigid structure, and in the office every day, and we just made games kind of like old school style, right? And I had a boss, and I had a boss's boss, and all that kind of stuff. Then I go away for 15 years and I come back and I've got a company. I've got a game that I'm directing. We're working remote and I'm living in Japan, but I'm able to run this company the way I'd like to run it. And it's kind of like I get the best of both worlds. I get to have the freedom, the creative freedom, the kind of the more of the flexibility that sometimes some more Western focused companies have, maybe some less rigidness, but still be able to enjoy and take advantage of this incredible country, of just how beautiful it is, how pleasant the people are, how great the food is. I mean, it's just, I get the best of both worlds. I feel very blessed and lucky to be able to do this.
I cannot wait to come back and visit you in Tokyo, my friend. It's been way too long. Yeah, no, I love it out there. And my wife and I have been talking about that, and our daughter hasn't been to Japan yet, so we have to make that a reality. So we'll definitely
please, let me know.
We'll be looking you up as soon as we can confirm that, but we want to do it.
Let's do it.
I have an interest. Yeah, I have a perspective on this. Obviously the pandemic's affected everybody, but EP's always been on the road, right? That's one of the privileges that I've had, is to go and visit studios everywhere. And you're right, there is something to producing material somewhere else and then sending it back and taking advantage of all of these different time zones. You can be very proficient with that. Has there been any stumbles or hurdles, or has it been challenged? Has it, any things that made you question your ability to keep doing that along the way, or have you guys figured it all out and it's all smooth sailing now?
I feel like everybody's still trying to figure out what the best balance is. I don't think we're all going to go back to offices and basically tell people no more remote work. I don't think that's really on the horizon, but I think still trying to figure out what the best balance is in terms of providing that flexibility, taking advantage of the fact that we can, in the past, we had basically, like, let's say on Metal Gear, we had 12 hours of time in a normal work day where work was being done on the game. But yeah, if we fully embrace full, true global game development with remote, you can get 24 hours. You can double the amount of time that you spend on the game per day, because if you just think about the different time zones and people that are working on the title, so there's so many great benefits. But I think it's impossible to deny that when we get people together and we get into a room and we talk through things and we work through issues, there's some real magic there that just doesn't happen when you're just doing it over a Zoom call or something. And so it's really striking that balance. I think is something that we haven't perfected, and I'm fascinated by the topic and trying to learn with everybody else as we try to navigate all of this.
Yeah, no, I am too. I've also been learning a lot about distributed development, because I've been working with the External Development Summit here in Vancouver over the last several years. And it really opened my eyes that everything is distributed now. Prior to the pandemic, there was just so much sharing of responsibilities with different corporations all over the place. And that almost predated and got everybody kind of ready to have the pandemic in a way in the games industry, because they were already doing that kind of thing. Let's talk about your...
That's right.
Yeah, let's talk about your relationship now with Marvel. Obviously, you guys signed on early as Marvel Games was kind of climbing to new heights, I think, with the Spider-Man titles and the announcement of Wolverine. And there's the new deal now with Electronic Arts and stuff. But it feels like Marvel Games has just been growing and growing and trying to assert their ambitions and kind of mirror and emulate some of the wins of the MCU. What's your relationship with Marvel? How was it working with Marvel? And are you going to work with Marvel some more?
So we had an absolute blast working with Marvel and Marvel Games on the original release of Marvel's Iron Man VR. They were super supportive. I was worried and nervous going in there, thinking that they were just going to tell us what to do. And that usually doesn't work well with a guy like me who's got a message he wants to tell and a game that we want to make. And it took me a while to learn to trust that Marvel was there to help and guide, but not tell us what to do. And I really respected that about them and appreciated about them. And I should have known that at the beginning because, a good close friend of mine, I know you know this guy, Brian Intihar, who's the director of Marvel Spider-Man on PS4.
Wonderful guy. Yeah.
Great guy. He was telling me, he's like, Ryan, it's gonna be great. You're going to love it. Right. But I didn't believe him at the time, but it ended up being the case. And I think that you can see with the titles that they put out there, you mentioned Miles Morales is a really good game as well. They've just Marvel Snap. There's so many really cool things
infecting the universe right now. I know they're making some great bets, and I know they're really Spider-Man 2 or whatever it's going to be finally called next year. That's the thing I'm most excited to play. I cannot wait to see what Insomniac does with their Spider-Men, in this next year. It's an incredible time to be a Marvel fan.
It is, and I think one reason to get excited about it is that you have to hear me harp about this, like my team has to hear me harp about this almost every single day, is that when you're creating something from scratch, even with a known IP, you as a developer, you're spending 75% of your time and resources building things that aren't yet fun. And you're just like building the scaffolding, you're building the foundation for this thing. And on top of that, you got to make a really fun and polished and amazing experience, right? When you start from the beginning, when you have an opportunity to sequel, you don't have to do that. You can start with a very solid foundation and then focus on what can make it even better, which is why I think games like BioShock, Portal, Arkham Asylum, and Insomniac Spider-Man are such incredible achievements because that was their first stab at that game, and it was so good as well. So imagine what Brian and that team over there are going to do with Spider-Man 2. That gets me really excited about next year as well.
Me too. I think even about the old classic Spider-Man 2 game, which was so like the open world Spider-Man 2, which was such a mind-blowing revelation when we all played that back then. I know that the PlayStation VR 2, it's been announced that it's not backwards compatible. And I don't know if you can announce or talk about that at all, but is there going to be a way to play Iron Man VR if you've already got it on PSVR 2? Or are you guys able to work on the development of that at all? Or what happens? Is it just a PSVR game, or can it also be played on PSVR 2?
So I'll be honest, I'm especially now as being part of Meta, being part of Oculus Studios, I can really truly say, hey, I'm now fully dedicated to Quest 2 and the Quest platform, the Quest platform, right? And I could be a fan of PlayStation VR 2. Like I said, I pre-ordered mine earlier today. So I'm just speaking from what I can tell, from what I've been told is that, and what I read online is that, yes, in fact, I don't think that there is true backwards compatibility for the original PlayStation VR titles for PlayStation VR 2. But the cheeky answer is that you can still play PSVR original games on your PlayStation 5.
That's true.
You just have to connect a PSVR with that special cable you have to order, which is, in my opinion, the preferable experience because the load times are faster. It utilizes the SSD, and you can play Iron Man VR on PS5. You just have to deal with the previous hardware.
Yeah. Okay. I want to ask you all about what the future holds, but we can't really get into it. I guess talk to me about working with Meta. I mean, these are tumultuous times with Meta. There's no way to ignore it. It's all over the damn place right now. What's happening over there? Well, with the tech companies everywhere. I mean, I can't imagine people are thrilled about the state of affairs happening within Twitter right now. But talk to me about this transition to being part of this larger organization and what it's like to work with these groups.
You're right. It's, you wake up in the morning and there's sometimes some bad news about the company and sometimes there's negative sentiment. There's no denying that, right? And which I think is why I find it so fascinating that for us as developers and what we focus on each and every day is a completely different type of thing. Our experience is completely different. And the reason why I sold my company to Meta is because of just how incredible of a company and the incredible amount of like in the people that we work over there has been just so amazing. Like
Awesome.
In the 11 years that I ran Camouflaj, we were never treated with more respect and with more grace and with just more trust than Oculus Studios treated us, going all the way back to when we brought Republic to VR on the Oculus Go and on the Gear VR, which was
awesome.
a whole crazy project. And I remember thinking when we did that project with them, I thought, I got to figure out a way to work with these guys again. Like
that's great.
And so now that I'm from the inside looking out, I'm excited for when we have an opportunity to share what we've been up to, because this Oculus Studios group is not messing around, Vic. We've got 8 amazing studios now. Armature, Sanzaru, Ready at Dawn, Twisted Pixel, Beat Studios, Downpour. There's like so many great studios that are building amazing content, big box, and the future is very, very bright. And so I can't wait for people to just see what this first party group is capable of doing.
That's awesome. Well, I echo your sentiment there. I've worked with Oculus right from the very beginning, and the people there have been amazing with me. And I think also patient with me, because my beat isn't just VR, because I talk about all kinds of other stuff, but they've just been very generous and great with the time. And there's been some really great titles that I've been able to experience because of the investments that they've been making over there. It's incredibly impressive, and I obviously there's a lot of attention on the metaverse, but I think the metaverse doesn't exist if there aren't fantastic games to play. I mean, that's central, isn't it? I mean, video games, you can be a little reductive and dismissive about the importance and the value of video games, but you and I both know that they're pushing all entertainment forward, and they make Apple a tremendous amount of money on the App Store, and Google on the App Store. And they're just an incredibly important part of our entertainment consumption going forward, and crucial for the metaverse. And I would imagine every level at Meta understands the value of video games over there.
I think so, and I think that's why you've seen it for years. You've seen that it's not just this current conversation about metaverse. It's not just about when we talk about immersive technology such as VR, AR, MR, that games are pushing this thing forward before pretty much anything else, right?
Yes.
This is not an anomaly. Games push technology forward, and it has since the dawn of time, when computers were first running and you get GUIs going on. What can we do with it? I guess we could make some spreadsheets, but let's make a video game, right? And see how far we can push it. Whether it comes to GPUs, high-speed internet, when it comes to HDTVs, when it comes to graphics and rendering technology, motion controls, like so many. And I think that's what Meta really recognizes. In fact, Mark Zuckerberg talked about that in a recent interview. He said, hey, gaming is a big part of what Meta's doing because it helps push technology forward. Gaming has traditionally done that. And I think we'll continue to do that until, I don't know, the end of time.
That's you and I have both built careers on this. It's not just it's not just a part. It's such a massive driver of storytelling and communication and escapism. I see it in my 10-year-old daughter. Right, she gets on Facebook Messenger for kids with her friends, and they play Roblox. That's what they do. That's how they chat. They connect over a chat platform, but they connect through play. And it's so important and intrinsic in all of us, isn't it? We should get your daughter on here to join the interview so I can ask her a question about the metaverse, because it's such a controversial topic, right? And so, people have all different opinions about what it could be. But I actually feel like people like your daughter who are playing in Roblox right now don't need convincing of a lot of the vision of what's being discussed about the future of the metaverse, where people are going to connect online and they're going to make things together. There's going to be commerce. There's going to be a lot of coexistence and interesting social experiences where people can express themselves and do all these things in game-like virtual environments. It's happening right now in Roblox. It's happening in VR chat right now. It's happening in lots of pockets of the industry. It's just, where's this going to go? I think the question is not, is this a thing? It's like, how big is this going to go? Well, and I think one of the chief challenges is how much it's locked off, and how much of these brands and these characters and these franchises and these worlds that we're familiar with from other entertainment are trademarked and like there, it needs to be very open, and maybe not as fantastical as Ready Player One, but it certainly should be inviting and not limited, not limited to one group or company or whatever, sort of saying it can only go on this way. I mean, Ready Player One was a great visual, and everybody uses Ready Player One footage in their YouTube videos when they're talking about the metaverse. But I think all of us nerds came out of that movie and went, "Well, that really felt like a Warner Brothers movie, didn't it? It was just all Warner." And I don't think that is the distillation of the idea of the metaverse, right? It can't feel like it's just because of one big deal. It needs to be completely wide open.
You're right. I think that's why companies like Meta and many others like Epic, they talk about interoperability, about being able to take things that you created, things you bought, brands, IP, things you love, being able to take them from one world to another world. And I think that's a really, really important part of all of this. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So you've made arguably, well, definitely one of, if not the biggest licensed game in VR. That's driving people to the platform, and I applaud you for doing that. And I'm I know that the road to that was not super, because you and I talked about this before. You had to pitch Marvel on your concept, and everybody was pitching a Marvel or an Iron Man VR experience because it's just a perfect fit. But you got it, and you did it. Do you want to make more licensed games? Maybe it's not your next one, but do you want to make more licensed games and bring some of these characters and these properties into this space?
For me, the question isn't about, hey, should we work on a licensed title or not? It's really what kind of games inspire us? What kind of worlds inspire us? And what kind of stories can we tell? And how can we best utilize the platform to really lean into the strengths of that core platform? So again, with Iron Man, it was like any dum-dum could come up with a great pitch, right? Which is, oh, it's Iron Man. You got your helmet, you got the HUD for the headset, you've got your thrusters, you got the motion controllers. You can fly around, you can ground pound, rocket punch. It just matched really, really well. And for me, if there are other IP or other universes that we believe can match really, really well with the core strengths of VR, and then it's a world that we as Camouflaj can live in that allows us to do what we're all about, which is creating high quality, meaningful content, then we'll do it, regardless if it's original IP or an existing IP. And so that's really what we're all about.
Awesome. What was the thing that nailed the pitch for you? How did you get the game? What do you think you guys provided in your pitch that Marvel said yes to?
The long story short, I'm sitting in Jae Young's office, who runs Marvel Games, and I said, hey, I know you want us to make a VR game for Marvel, so I talked to the team and we want to do Iron Man, and he just laughed at me and said, you could pretty much do anything else except Iron Man. I'm saving that for a bigger studio, more reputable studio. No offense, Ryan. And I said, okay, I understand. And I was thinking, I just want to do Iron Man. It's perfect. I just want to do Iron Man. So I said, okay, so for this other studio you're going to give Iron Man to, what would it take for them to convince you that they're the best studio for that property? And he's like, I know what you're trying to do here, Ryan, but I'll humor you with the answer. It needs to be this budget. It needs to be a big budget. It needs to have the best pitch I've ever seen. And I need to play the best prototype of any Iron Man VR game I've ever played. And I played a lot of them. And I said, okay, Jay, I'll be back in 2 weeks with all those things.
Wow.
And he just laughs. And so then I flew back up to Seattle from LA, and I sat down with the team and I told them that I had the conversation, and they just went to work. And within
Amazing.
2 weeks, I secured the budget. We had an incredible pitch that I was working on in a rental car while we're driving from Seattle to LA, with the prototype in the back on a big PC, because we were nervous about putting it on the airplane. So sure. Me and Brendan and Troy and Brendan's dog, Remy, in this rental car, driving from Seattle to LA, knowing if we didn't get this pitch, we're done as a company.
Oh, Jesus. Wow.
That was it.
That's incredible.
We set up shop at Marvel. I gave the pitch. And meanwhile, one of Jay's colleagues is in the prototype. We threw him in there just to try out the game. Said he's going to probably play for a few minutes. I'm like 30 minutes into my pitch. I look over, he's still playing the prototype. He's got a huge smile on his face.
That's great.
And then Jay looked to me and shook my hand and said, I think you got it.
Wow. Well, congratulations, brother. I want to end this interview, and I don't want to end this interview, but I want to end this interview with a recommendation or two for games in VR, because I know you guys have to kind of keep your eyes on everything out there. So maybe people don't know it, maybe they haven't heard of it. So why don't you give me a couple of game ideas that people should check out? Absolutely.
So I think for anybody who's picking up a Quest 2 this holiday, you mentioned Resident Evil 4, incredible title. It's pretty much perfect. It's an amazing way to experience that game. Tetris Effect, I think, is a really interesting and it's the exact opposite of Resident Evil 4. You're going to have your heart racing after Resident Evil 4, but if you needed to kind of chill and just take in the immersive technology of VR and just be there in this kind of flow mind state, it's a really, really incredible game. And then lastly, I'll throw out a game that really surprised me last year. I'm not sure if you played it. It's called Song in the Smoke. It's kind of like what I call a caveman simulator built for VR, exclusively for VR. I think the team at 17-Bit did a fantastic job. I didn't know that I wanted to have a simulation of being a caveman until I played this game, and I'm like, yeah, this is pretty cool. The wish fulfillment was there. I didn't even know I had that wish, and now I have it.
That's awesome. Dude, I love speaking with you, and I'm so proud
Likewise.
of you. And it's been amazing to watch your journey, and it continues. And I cannot wait to hear what's next. And maybe we'll find a way to come out and visit you in Tokyo, and we'll, I don't know, sit down for another interview, and you can tell us what you're working on.
Well, I would love that, and always around. Love hanging out with you. Just please extend my greetings to your wife and your daughter, and just keep it going, Vic. It's amazing what you've created and what you've built and continue to do. And I'm looking forward to when we can connect again next.
Big time, pal. Good to see you. Thank you so much. Have an awesome day, and congrats on launching Iron Man VR on Quest 2.
Available now. Get it.
Thanks, bud. Take care.
Thank you.